They're just going to get done.
Recording in progress.
And Andrew.
Responsibility, but I said, no, it's probably my responsibility to check on them, but I didn't know they were going to be.
No, try your responsibility.
There's again.
Well, if we lose the internet, don't we lose quorum?
It's potential. It was really windy.
I'll be lucky to keep it too. It's really windy out here in Lund.
Yeah. Okay. I'm getting the majority of the council, I don't know.
I would assume at this point.
Here's Director Powell.
Yes, they are.
Okay, Chair, you can start the meeting at any point in time.
All right. Welcome everyone. This is the qathet Regional Hospital District meeting for March 24th, 2026. Recognizing that we're holding the meeting on the unceded Powell traditional territory next to Jumich, which is the Wellington Beach. Beautiful flat land is what that means. Today we are looking at, we have the agenda in front of everybody. Corporate officer, is there any changes to the agenda?
I have not been advised of any changes, Chair.
Okay. Do we have a motion to
Approval of the agenda?
Second. All right. All in favor? Everyone carried. Any opposed? Don't see any. Motion carries. We have the adoption of minutes from the January 27th, 2026 meeting. Everybody had a chance to review those. Are there any errors or omissions to the minutes?
Move adoption.
Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. All right, moving along. We are down, no delegations or inquiries. Unfinished business, down to correspondence. Correspondence have been attached. You want to turn this over to you?
We would just want to know if anybody has any business so that we know.
Oh, okay. Is there any business arising out of the correspondence? Moving along. CARES report. Oh wow. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I don't mean to alarm everyone. This is my first CARES report. So we had the Vancouver Coastal Health Working Group meeting that was attended by the corporate officer and Director McCormick. Director Elliott sent her regrets, and I think we'll be moving forward with Director Elliott as the vice chair for those meetings. There was some of the items are confidential. Yes. So we'll have to discuss those in camera. I think we'll bring that up there. That was the report there, so we'll tackle that later on. Can everybody online hear me? Sorry, I didn't do a sound check. Yeah, yep. Thank you. Good. Resolutions? There is none. Reports. I believe we are looking at the fourth quarter Regional Hospital District 2025 Strategic Plan Progress Report.
I'll move the motion in the agenda.
Second.
Andy, second.
All in favor?
Oh, I had something to say. But,
oh, sorry. Yeah. Go for it.
That's quick. I just wanted to thank staff for bringing, being able to pull out the hospital district. I know we've talked a bit about that before, but I think it's really useful for us and for the public to see, hospital district items in the hospital district agenda. So I really want to express appreciation. I think it's great. And this is a nice way we can move forward. Thank you.
Comments. All in favor? Is there any opposed? Seeing none. I believe that's carried. Moving on to 10.2, 2026 to 2030 Regional Hospital District Financial Plan Draft 2. And we have The first motion on here is that the board of the qathet Regional Hospital District accept as draft 2 and as guide and as guiding information, the 2026-2030 financial plan schedule for the qathet Regional Hospital District as presented at the March 24th, 2026 board meeting.
So move.
Director McCormick moves. Do we have a seconder? Director Gisborne, all in favor? Discussion, I'm sorry.
Perhaps we should ask Ms. Greenan if she has any additional information to share.
Yes, please. Ms. Greenan, is there any additional information to share?
Thank you, through the chair. No, I just wanted to mention that this financial plan incorporates the direction from the board, and there are a few minor changes, but nothing substantial from draft 1.
Discussion. Oh, Director Lennox, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's probably from Ms. Greenan. Just looking at page 13 of 14, I think I know what I'm looking at, but I see yellow, green, and red. And anytime I see red there in our 26 to 25 budget there, the variance. So maybe we could get an explanation as to the red and the greens in the variance columns.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair. Yes, so all that is, it's just a coding in Excel, just to whenever there's a large decrease or a large increase, then it codes it red if it's a large decrease, and then green if it's a large increase.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's all it's doing. It's just highlighting where the larger increases or decreases are.
Thank you. I thought so. Appreciate it.
Director Gisborne.
Thank you, Chair. I'm gonna build off of page 13 of 14. I think look at the requisition. Sorry, the requisition for the regional was 3.9 million in 2025, and we're looking at 3.1 million for 2026. And the reason I bring this up is, in our strategic plan progress report, one of the issues that came up was what are the needs of our community in terms of healthcare, and a lot that we haven't heard back yet from Vancouver Coastal Health. And I know the provincial budget is a little tight in the belt, and I'm thinking about the long-term needs of this community, and I'm wondering about long-term care facilities. I know this is a bit early to try and pass a motion about long-term care, but I'm wondering if maybe we should actually increase the requisition to strengthen our reserves, because we're seeing very high costs for these long-term care facilities. And I know this is kind of the 11th hour, but I'm just kind of wondering about the appetite around the table to actually maybe increase our requisition to be more in alignment with maybe last year's requisition, because we're seeing a decrease of about $812,000. Ms. Green,
sorry.
Through the chair, I apologize. That is the wrong. The 2025 actuals on there are not correct, because it's actually a 2.2% increase. So we do have a requisition increase overall of 2.2%, but I'm not sure. I'm sorry, that schedule seems to be incorrect. I do have the correct one, and I could put that up on the screen right now.
Please.
So it was.
I will see if everybody can see it.
Okay, I'll share my screen. So this is what the actual year to date in 20. Can everyone see my screen?
You can zoom. Yeah, zoom in on this.
Okay. So here it is. It's actually the requisition in 2025 was actually 3.07 million. And so it's gone up to 3.1 million. So it's an increase of 66,935 and an increase of $1,187 per Tla'amin Nation. So yeah, and we do have a contribution to the reserve of $1.8 million. Yeah, so 1.817349 is the contribution to reserve.
The Director Lennox has a question, I believe. His hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. That's why I was a bit confused. I'm glad we went over this because something didn't add up to me. I just want to clarify under revenue on that same page that because it's really hard for me to see the presentation there. Proceeds from reserve, so we're 1,016,298. Is that still correct?
Okay, so
Yes.
that is yes, so this compares the budget from 2025 to the budget for 2026. And so it's a $1.016 million increase. And the reason for that is that in 2025, we didn't have, we thought there was only going to be 16,000 left of the cost share to pay out. And then we approved a subsequent cost share during the year. So this basically, the transfer from reserve actually funds the cost share request to Vancouver Coastal Health that's shown down here. And that includes the balance of the 2023 to 2024 cost share, and then the new $800,000 cost share that was approved for the X-ray room, as well as the $50,000 potential grant to the Foundry.
Thank you. And maybe just a quick follow-up, Chair. I guess this is maybe same points Director Gisborne was making. Like my question is, are our reserves still healthy? You know, do we have to, you know, since we keep dipping into these for capital shares, I remain concerned about that method. And I'd appreciate, you know, maybe as we look ahead that we do consider, you know, because all of our reserves, we've been talking about a policy in that. I think this applies as well. So I appreciate the clarity on that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Gisborne?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Green, and that really helps. You know, that helps me with the next question I was going to ask. That clarifies those numbers. So we're looking at a 2% increase year over year in this budget, and I'm still thinking about the long-term needs because we do keep getting these cost share requests, and every year it kind of changes based on what VCH wants. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if there's any appetite to maybe go from a 2% increase to like a 4% increase, because I think 3% is CPI, and I think 3% is keeping it level. I think 4% would, I'd be a little more happy with 4%. Maybe we can get some more leveraging with the province if they ever do get any money again. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering what's the appetite around the table, and if that's a motion that the corporate officer would find in order. To go the requisition from a 2% increase to a 4% increase.
Thank you. It may be better suited at financial plan. Are we thinking that? Like, are we thinking about changing? We don't want to change draft 2 because we're at the deadline date. So would that be better considered at 11.1?
When we go to actually adopt the bylaw.
Because you're considering changes. Is that correct?
Yeah. To increase the requisition from a 2% requisition increase to a 4% requisition increase. And I'm just wondering about you know, our chief financial officer, because I think getting that kind of ahead of us right now before, of course, we get to the end of the meeting and then throw something else forward.
Mm-hmm. So that would be in Schedule A.
Yeah. But also if the assembly isn't interested, then I don't want to make our CFO do a bunch of work. Hello, Rob. I mean, Director Subcom.
My apologies.
We're at 10.2 right now on the agenda.
Oh, excellent. I was hoping it was going to be all done.
Thank you. So if that's a change that you're desiring to make, it probably is better at the financial plan. I'm fairly certain, unless the CAO can tell me why that wouldn't be the case.
Then I will keep my powder dry until we get to that item, which is 11.1.
A question. 10.2, item number 3 says that the financial schedule as presented at this meeting would then go to this meeting later. And so if we want, so I'm just checking whether if we're not boarding it as presented, if there is an appetite to board it in a different way.
Oh, thank you,
Yeah.
through the chair.
Go upstairs.
Regardless of the direction to forward a bylaw, the assembly will retain the right to amend it at that point in time.
Director Fall.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify what we're talking about here, and there'll be a question through the chair to our financial manager, if just to clarify my understanding. So the reserves right now at the end of 2025 are 6.3 million about. The transfers to reserves shown in the information just presented on our screens in this budget is around 1.9 million going into the Section 20 reserve, and then another 291,000 into the Section 20 reserve. So my question is going to be is this correct? And the third part of the question is the item that will come up after 10.2.1 is about the surplus. And so maybe since we're talking about reserves and transfers to reserves, how much is the surplus from 2025?
It's
Thank you, Chair, through the chair. It's $7,079. So
okay, no, chump change.
And if I could, through the chair, please, I just wanted to mention the so the 1.9 million that you see, that includes the interest. So the actual reserve contribution is they're shown, as 1.817 million to the Section 20 reserve and 232,714 to the maintenance reserve.
Okay, so 1.817 million and then plus 232, that's what we're putting from tax requisitions plus the interest on that.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Sorry. It's actually 240,000 going into the maintenance reserve. This is the spreadsheet that I'm showing you isn't it's not, it doesn't do it's not doing the correct reserve calculation. So it's actually 240,000 into the maintenance reserve plus interest.
And just as a follow-up, could I clarify on what that would mean for our I'm just trying to understand because there's the ins and outs of what we have to give to BCH. So our reserves at the end of 2025 are around 6.3, and then 2026 would be 6.9. Is that after? I'm just trying to understand whether or after,
so the
or when in the year
reserves, so the reserves are estimated at 6.7 million at the end of 2026 for the Section 20, and that includes the spending, the commitments to the hospice and the potential spending to the foundry. And then the maintenance reserve is estimated at $3.3 million.
Great, thank you.
No more discussion. Call the question. That the board of the qathet Regional Hospital District accept as draft 2 as the guiding information for 2026 to 2030 financial plan scheduled for the qathet Regional Hospital District as presented at the March 24th, 2026 meeting. And that the board of the qathet Regional Hospital District direct that any 2025 surplus be allocated to the Section 20 reserve. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Then on to number 3.
So moved.
Okay. Second. All in favor?
Any
Discussion.
discussion? That would be efficiency. No discussion.
Shell shocked from the first meeting. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. On to 10.3, procedural bylaw update. That the Regional Hospital District Board refer and recommend Board Procedure Amendment Bylaw number 557.3, 2026 to the qathet Regional Hospital Board for first reading through adoption. Discussion.
make the motion.
Or go ahead, Director Fall, second.
Okay. All in favor?
The discussion.
Discussion. Wow, sorry. Director Fall, I see your hand up.
Yes, I had two questions. One, maybe I'll start with the minor one, and these are probably for the corporate officer. I understand part of this would be to update the numbering, but I noticed something that might have been a typo from a previous version of this because I looked back and tried to figure this out. So in or current 4.21 makes reference to section 4.13, and I think that should be 4.14. And I saw it's not a big deal. It's uh, just when the renumbering happens, I don't think there needs to be a motion or anything, but just to confirm. And I look back to see because the 4 point it talks about the report and the reporting from the report from the delegate is 4.14, and it's yeah, I just noticed that there's an additional section added in a previous iteration of this. And anyways, and the main question is, you know, I understand all the changes. I totally think they make sense. The removing the section on, you know, there's a removal of a section referring to transfer of authority if the chair and the vice chair are both not available. And in the past, that would have just gone to the next director on the list. So that comes out because we have a fixed vice chair, which makes sense. But the question I have in general is what would the procedure be if that event happened, both the chair and the vice chair are unavailable, then there's nothing in our procedure bylaw to say what happens. And I'm just curious to know if there's a default action that would happen there.
Thank you through the chair. I believe it's covered under the Emergency Act. I should have included that language here, but there is language that we would follow for that.
Is it not under, sorry, the new 1.23? If both the chair and the designated vice chair are absent from the meeting, members must choose a director to preside?
No, so this is in relation to declaration of, and so that's covered in legislation. And so we would follow legislation. We don't need to have a separate procedure in our procedure bylaw.
Okay, that's great. I just wanted to check just because it makes sense given the changes, the other changes, but I think that's all clear. Thank you.
Director Lennox.
Yeah, sorry, I came off mute there earlier and probably confused you. Yeah, I appreciate some of these changes, having the vice chair, getting through all that. I guess as I read these and we consider more and more bylaws, procedures, they can become restrictive and they can sort of hamper the open dialogue. So I think it's just more of a statement I'd like to make. I'm prepared to vote for it because I understand we need some procedures, but I hope this board will maintain their sense of openness to allow people to not be so hampered by 5 minutes and 2 opportunities and you're done sort of attitude. And because as we debate, you directors actually give me new thoughts and new ideas and new considerations that become very pertinent to the discussion. And if we can't speak up and voice ourselves, well, then it becomes sort of adversarial and we start getting into the weeds. So I just we have been able to maintain over time that ability to say, actually, I'd like to speak again, and we respect each other. So I guess I'm just asking for us to consider that, because the more we put rules in the place, we sort of pigeonhole ourselves. Thank you.
Good one.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm picking up on what's coming around the table. Proposed policy 4.59, a member may speak for no more than 5 minutes on any one occasion on a question, and no more than 2 occasions on the same question, and no more than 10 minutes in total on the same question, except by leave of the board. And this is a policy I have a bit of an issue with, and kind of comes from some of the experience around this table over the last 7 years. And one of the challenges that came up was I would often hear, okay, you only get 2 opportunities to speak and that's it. And I would constantly fire back, that's not in the procedure bylaw. Well, now it looks like we are putting it in the procedure bylaw. And the reason I have an issue with that is it says you can only speak to the item twice. Each time you can only speak 5 minutes. So maybe you have something to say that's going to take 7 minutes, but you don't want to say anything else. So you kind of break it up into 2 sections. I would be happy with, if we struck out like the middle clause. So it would say a member may speak for no more than 10 minutes in total on the same question. So whether you speak once or twice or 3 times shouldn't really matter. It's, are you using up more than 10 minutes? I think would actually be a far more efficient use of our time. And I think we've had a lot of great restraint around the table when it comes to how many times we speak to an issue, how long we speak to an issue. And most of the issues that we deal with, they're fairly benign, they're fairly straightforward. And keep in mind that this bylaw does not just impact the Regional Hospital District Board. It also impacts all of the committees at the regional district. And just to go down a little rabbit hole, just a small one, when it comes to things like planning and land use regulation and zoning bylaws, I know I could go on for hours about it, but there's a lot of details in, bylaw changes. And we might be talking about, minimum parcel size or the actual use of industrial or all those kind of things. And it really needs to kind of go around the table and gestate. And when I see this policy of 5.59 saying you can only speak twice to any issue, well, with except by leave of the board, you kind of go, well, if the board's okay with it, then you can speak more. That doesn't alleviate my concerns. So I'm not sure if the best way forward is to propose an amendment. Yeah, I'll propose an amendment that we change 4.59 to strike out after the first no more, all the way up to the end of the second no more.
Thank you. So if I may, in the procedure bylaw, we would be amending clause 2.1.11.
4.59.
Yes, so sorry, in the amending procedure bylaw, the clause we're referring to there.
Yeah, it's 5.57 is crossed out and 5.59 is written, and then it's proposed bylaw 557.3. So essentially it would read, a member may speak for no more than 10 minutes in total on the same question, except by leave of the board.
I'll second that.
Okay. Very good one.
Thank you. I'll be quick because I think I've already exhausted a lot of time already. I like this amendment because then it means that, whether you speak once, 2 or 3 times, sometimes it's just a question that someone asks, and that might be considered, oh, that was one chance to speak, even if it only took 30 seconds. I think this amendment actually makes it really simple and clean. It just says you have a total of 10 minutes to speak on any item. And if any directors start to kind of stray from this, a little sand timer can actually help. Every time you turn it up right, it starts to go. So I think this will kind of allow us to continue the good work around the table where we are able to hear the whole picture. So, thanks, sir.
Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, I find that I'm generally in favor of, as much as possible, having more natural discussions around a table, because we often do hear from one person, it sparks something else, it raises a question or a new opinion. I think it's really important to set constraints for a discussion. I think 10 minutes actually is quite generous. If someone has had a total, I think even less than that would be, could even make sense, but on really important matters that require really robust understanding, maybe 10 minutes is where it's at. I think the trickiness lies in, like, how do you mentioned the egg timer. I don't, even with the existing bylaw, what are the practices? I know at the council table, a lot of times it's just based on like an estimate. If you know someone's gone over, then that's when you start to interfere as chair or intervene as chair. It's tricky. And it's rarer to have to police this, but I think the 10, I think I would support this motion. I think it would be important for the chair to still be able to intervene if the person's going off topic, if the discussions that they're having are no longer relevant to the debate, they're talking about something else. This doesn't stop the chair from intervening in those situations, but I think, you know, and this is a time where I may hear from other people who disagree and I might change my mind, but like my first sense is that this allows for a little bit more natural discussion and evolution of opinions as a conversation goes on. So at this point, I'm considering supporting this amendment to the bylaw.
Director Southcott, and then see Director McCormick next.
Thank you, Chair. One of the saddest things I think I've ever seen around this kind of table is procedure battles. Really want to not do that. Particularly because the regional hospital district does not have a committee of the whole. I think it behooves us to leave some room for flexibility so that we can work on issues around the table, because as Director Isaacson mentioned, when we start talking about things, often my experience is it stimulates more thinking and new ideas. And one of the imperatives of this kind of job is that we turn up with an open mind and with an ability to be influenced by each other. So I do support this as well. I also believe that even though this can be in procedure, if necessary, this can be varied with our consent. So that's what I really love, is how we can actually work together. And I think this does take us in that direction. So I'm going to support the amendment.
So Director McCormick, have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I also support this. I think having more and freer dialogue is a good thing. So I can't see any reason to not support it. But I do have a question as well. And that is that when I was first elected 12 years ago, there was a committee of the whole at the regional hospital district. And Colin Palmer chaired it, as well as chairing the board at that time. And so my question to staff is, what happened to committee of the whole? Where did it go?
Thank you for the chair. I think what occurred is that the committee of the whole wasn't meeting, and we found that a significant number of, I think, years went by. We needed to adopt minutes that were quite a few years old, and it was not, that's what happened, is that it wasn't meeting, and so it just wasn't meeting, and we switched to doing the business at the board table.
Yep, Director McCormick.
So, yeah, just follow up. So then it wasn't like abolished or anything. So it could be resurrected if we wanted to start committee of the whole meetings at the hospital to support. That would be possible? Question?
Sure. Yes.
Thank you.
Director Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple questions. So first, as confirmation of my understanding, because I believe what we're doing is voting to amend the amendment bylaw, which is on page 5 of 34 of our package. So the motion on the table is actually to amend item 2.1.11, which actually refers to changing that section of the actual procedure bylaw. So we're not voting here to amend the procedure bylaw. We're voting to amend the amendment bylaw that has that section 2.1.11, which actually enacts that change. Is that so first, I guess I'll ask that question through the chair, if that's just to be clear what we're doing here.
Yes, that was what I was clarifying at the beginning there.
Oh, thank you very much. The second is, so I mean, 2 times, if there's a limit of, there's sort of, I guess, on one hand, I support some controls on length, but if you have 10 minutes, doesn't matter whether it's 2 minutes and 8 minutes or 6 minutes and 4 minutes. 2 times 5 minutes would be one way to achieve. If we said we have a limit of twice and 5 minutes each, a maximum of 5 minutes each, or 10 minutes in total. So the first one, having a limit of 2 times speaking with 5 minutes for each, I should say, that would actually be easier to maintain. Allowing 10 minutes in total cumulative. I mean, I wouldn't want to see people speak 10 times for 1 minute, but anyways, I guess my question is, through the chair, is that going to be hard to manage for staff? Like, because if I've spoken for 7 minutes and someone else has spoken for 3, and there's 7 or 8 of us here, is that not, is that difficult for staff? And I guess I'll get the answer to the question first.
We haven't considered or contemplated how, but it's our responsibility to follow the orders of the board. So if that's the desire, then we would determine a system to allow you to follow your rules.
Okay, thank you. So if I would suggest that if we do this, if it becomes onerous for staff, and I look forward, I would open for staff to come to us and say, this is really difficult for us. It's taking, this person who has to track this little chart of 8 columns, that if that's difficult, that we consider, that there would be consideration for instead having limits on the number of time. If you said alternatively, you can speak twice and 5 minutes per time, then that would be the same effect. And the last thing I'd like to point out, because I think there's been a couple comments to suggest this is just for the hospital district, and this is just to confirm. The motion would be to make these changes and send it to the regional board. The hospital district follows the procedure bylaw of the board, so the board would see this and adopt it. So that would be another step. But then this would apply equally to the board, the committee of the whole, finance committee, and such committees, in addition to the hospital district. So I guess I'll confirm that through the chair, but otherwise I'll stop speaking.
Thank you through the chair. Yes, so this applies to all committees and commissions and meetings of the board, the procedure bylaw, and the hospital board. So now on the amendment to the amending bylaw, just call it. I think you might be ready to call the question.
I think so. We'll call the question for the amendment to
2.1.11, Chair.
2.1.11. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none? Carried. Is there any additional discussion for that, Director Gisborne?
Yeah, I have one question, and it was something that came up when I read on page 10 or 15 or 34, proposed bylaw or proposed policy 3.7. The notice of meeting must specify the physical location at which the meeting is deemed to be held, and the facilities at that location must enable members of the public to hear or watch and hear the meeting. A regional district officer must be in attendance at that specified place. I'm fine with all the first section, but the last one, you always try and think of what are the parameters? What are the, how can things go sideways? And I think back to the pandemic when, a lot of us had to be socially distancing and folks working electronically. And it says a regional district officer must be in attendance at that specified place. And I read that as, okay, that means that wherever we have our meeting, we have to have an officer at that meeting. And 99% of the time, I think that's fine. That's what happens. It's normal. But there might be some instances where, our officers are ill or out of town on business, and there might be like a virtual option for attendance. And then the other question I kind of have, or the thing I'm thinking about, is sometimes there's in-camera discussions where there are no staff present. Would this policy mean that we could not actually have those discussions without any staff present? Do they have to be in the room in order for us to even have our meeting?
Thank you. in two parts. Your point that you raised is very good because the regulations apply to certain meetings. So I think if we're referring this to the board for consideration, we should also ask staff to investigate that and provide, hopefully that's not us.
That's powerful. Hearing.
So I think we'll just do additional investigation on that clause. Through corporate officer groups and forums, having the language specified in the procedure bylaw for electronic meetings is required. With regards to in-camera meetings, I think perhaps that discussion should happen in camera.
Okay. In that case, I would move, well, unless there's any other amendments, I'd move that the rest of this discussion be handled in camera.
So are you, thank you, referring that discussion to the in-camera session today?
Yeah. Strike while the iron's hot. Well, unless anyone else is looking to do amendments or.
Are there any other discussion?
Okay, well, then now I'll move to send it in camera.
Okay.
Need a seconder though.
Seconder for moving on.
Question through the chair. Are we talking about the entire discussion about the procedure bylaw amendment bylaw or procedure bylaw amendment bylaw, or just the discussion on that item?
Just thank you through the chair. My understanding was just the discussion on in-camera meetings and staff attendance.
Yeah. That's my thoughts. And if there's a seconder, yeah.
Isaacson, yeah. All in favor?
Oh, I have a question. Through Chair. I just want to be clear to know what we're doing, because we have on the table a motion to recommend that this procedure bylaw be referred to the board. So so the question is, and I want to, like, I guess I don't really know exactly, are we sending this in camera, and then the idea would be that we can come out of in camera of this meeting and complete that motion, because that motion itself is not an in camera motion. Would that be how we are going to proceed here? I'm just wondering what happens with the motion on the table.
Is a part of this meeting, so it would be eligible to go in camera, but and a motion to refer is in order. It's a subsidiary motion to the main motion, so technically would be in order.
Okay, thanks.
Did I miss the question?
I think so.
Okay.
I think the chair or the director wants to know if we'll be coming back out of camera. 10.3.
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah. The assembly could go in camera right now if that's what they're desiring to do.
That's what he's desiring to do.
Oh.
Correct, Director Paul?
Yeah, that would actually, I think, be preferable from my point of view, because we deal with this issue and then we'd be on the same item. It would be clear, but if that's okay with the assembly, I would prefer that. But
let's check with Director Gismore what his intentions were.
Oh, my intention was to discuss this this policy line in camera, and then after our in-camera discussion, we can move it back out to the public session and hopefully finish it off. And if the assembly wants to go in camera right now, I think that is an option. However, looking at our agenda, we really only have the financial plan bylaws, the next item, so it might be good to just knock that one out and then go all in camera together.
Yeah. The chair, so procedurally, you were thinking to wait till the end of the meeting as usual?
Yeah.
And then come out of camera and then go back and deal with 10.3?
Yes.
Okay.
I did see Director McCormick, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to say, why don't we just refer this to the in-camera meeting? And then we can finish off the public agenda with the financial plan and then go in camera and deal with it there.
Everyone okay with that? Yeah, okay. I think that's what we'll do. Yeah, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none? Carried. Um, 11.1 Regional Hospital District 2026 to 2030 Financial Plan Bylaw number 135, 2026. That the board give first and second reading of the Regional Hospital District 2026 to 2030 Financial Plan Bylaw number 135, 2026.
So moved.
Second. Discussion? Yeah.
Is this where I would move an amendment to the requisition from 2% to 4%? I'm seeing a nod from the CIO. Okay, I'll move.
Oh,
Sorry.
we can give first reading first and then consider amendments.
Okay.
So.
Oh, okay.
That's appropriate.
So.
Or we can give first and second and consider amendments at that point in time. So if that's the motion that's currently on the table, I would call the question and then entertain amendments to the bylaw.
Okay, so I'll call the question.
I'm in favor.
All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none? Carried.
And then I'll move an amendment to increase the requisition from 2% to 4% year over year.
Chair.
Second by Director Lennox.
Okay, Director Lennox, second.
Actually, Chair, I just had a question if it's appropriate to ask. I don't know whether to support this or not. I have a question. I'm not sure how to proceed.
Seconding doesn't mean you support it. You just
Yeah,
don't hear it.
I'll second. So
Thank you.
Discussion. Director Lennox.
I guess I'll ask my question. What are the financial implications of going from 2 to 4%?
CFO, Director, or Screener.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, 1 minute, please, and I will find them.
Yeah. Thank you for.
Central. That's my question for the financial officer. Would a 4% increase apply to requisition regional? Would that also include Tla'amin, or would that be both or just one?
Thank you, Chair. So yes, it would be like a 1.8% increase on both, on each. Right, so it might not be quite 4% for Tla'amin as well, but it will. So we can look at the regional one for 4%, and then we have to allocate it based on the assessments.
Yeah, the reason I'm putting this forward is I believe the CPI is about 3%, and there's something that I was informed or told at AVICC 6-7 years ago, and it had to do with Courtney Comox's new hospital, and a lot of folks were coming up to the CVRD's board members and saying, how did you guys get a new hospital? And apparently they'd had very healthy reserves. And then one day the province said, we've got some money and it's coming up to campaign period, and they wanted to do some big announcement. And they looked around the province and they said, who can actually partner with us and who's ready to go? And over in Comox Valley, they went, well, we've got money, we can get building right away. And I know, what is it, $6-7 million we have in our reserves? It seems like a lot, but if you've seen some of the numbers coming out of the Lower Mainland, it's like $1.5 million a bed. That doesn't really go that far. And I don't expect the province to find any coins under the cushions right now. But, this is when we want to make sure that we are putting enough money into our reserves. So that way in the future, we can get another long-term care facility, because I don't need to send anyone up to the 4th floor to see what's been going on up there. And it's concerning. I think that we can do at least the CPI, which is about 3%, and I think 1 extra percent. I don't think the public are really going to be all that mad with us if we're saying, hey, we want to put this aside to start putting it towards future projects. Because healthcare is important for everyone in this community, both Tla'amin electoral areas and the city.
I did see Director Fall. Did you?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say, I mean, while I understand and have empathy for the intent of the motion, I'm not going to vote in favor. And the reason is, it's a bit last minute. I mean, we have to adopt this agenda today. It lacks transparency for the public, in my view, to make such a change. I would rather, and I do see the need for maybe building the reserves. I think it would be better to, rather than just arbitrarily fixing an increase in the tax requisition, I would rather see a plan that looks at to how we should be building the reserves over time. That could be done, started as part of some strategic planning session and so on. So I would really prefer to be looking at this over the year and be looking at what we do in the future. The 2% extra is in, roughly it's around $60,000. It's not that it's trivial, but that's about 1% of our total reserve. So it's not a make or break for building reserves. I think I would prefer to have a good plan for building reserves. And if that means higher requisitions in the future, I think that we can explain it to the public rather than just making a decision on the fly like this.
Okay. Is there any other questions at this time?
Thank you. I have a question. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
For the Chair. First, if this says that the qathet Regional Hospital District Financial Plan Bylaw 2026, I'll get the correct wording here. Number 135, 2026 be amended to change the requisition dash regional and requisition dash Tla'amin in Schedule A to be increased to 4%. Does that meet the requirements?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm also looking at our finance CFO. See that.
But I'll just get the wording correct here. No, I think if you guys understand that, I'll just ensure that the wording is correct, if that's what you're voting on.
Ms. Greenan, do you have any other information to add?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the change in the tax rates per 100,000 would be approximately 83 cents per 100,000. So that would be an 83 cent increase per year per $100,000 of net taxable value.
Did see Director Lennox, I believe, first, then Director McCormick.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks for the information. And I actually appreciate Director Gisborne you bringing this up, and I do think it should be part of our awareness as we head towards some of these services I'm going to need one day, I hope. But I think we've already realized we've asked our staff for a reserve policy. This very much would hopefully be referenced and sort of identified in there again. What's the right amounts? I'm prepared to go there, but I think that I'd like to make it part of that complete reserve approach because we have to do that in a concerted manner. So, and the other thing is, I do want to look ahead, but right now I'm getting constant phone calls and emails about the pressures our people are facing. And so 83 cents doesn't sound like much, but I want to do it with knowledge. And I want to do it with being able to talk to my residents and say, is this of value? So I think it is, but that's where I'm at now. Thanks.
Director McCormick, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm not in favor, excuse me, I'm losing my voice again, of making changes willy-nilly to things like our financial plan. This has been presented in public, on our website, and people have had an opportunity to view it, to provide comment to us if they have any, and to start changing everything at the 11th hour. I'm not saying that the changes probably aren't worth it and that it seems like a very small amount to increase our reserve. And I get that. And I'm not opposed to doing that. But I am opposed to doing it in a kind of willy-nilly one-off fashion. I want to see the reserve policy first. Yes, absolutely. And I agree with Director Fall that we should do all of this in the proper context. So let's not just go changing things here or there. I have an idea for this or for that. Let's build them into our budget planning and into our budgets as we move forward in the future. Um, and then we'll create a win-win situation. We'll get the good ideas and we'll do them properly, which is build them in, let the public comment, and then make our decision accordingly. So I'm not in favor of the amendment. And thank you for letting me croak, chair.
Thank you. Director Isaacson?
Yeah, thank you. A couple things. I think I would like to I think caution the board. There's some language that veers, like using words like willy-nilly. I think while this is a last minute change, I think we veer into being a little bit disrespectful of the mover. And so while it is a last minute suggestion and maybe falls outside the lines of what good practice and public notice would be, there's other ways that we can talk about it to both to uphold our respect for one another using our language. Having said that, though, I do agree with the previous two speakers in the sense that it is I think public notice is important for last minute changes such as this, and I think it demonstrates the importance to consider the weight of these sorts of plans early on in the process and make changes and have policies like reserve policies in order to have really robust discussions and thoughtful plans over the long term. Given that the increase would be quite small, I was very curious what it would pan out to be. It doesn't make or break the reserves, but I do appreciate the intention generally of having robust reserves. I think it would just be important for the board to have those discussions early on and think about the approach they want to take. And that's hard when you don't necessarily know the long-term health needs and what level of robustness should be. I agree with Councillor Gisborne in the sense that it is important to be able to act on funding opportunities that are offered from time to time, and having robust reserves would help that. I think in this case, though, the amount that it would raise is not worth it in terms of public notification and last minute changes, even though the total amount for $100,000 is not significant. I think good practice is important. So I kind of went back and forth on this issue, hearing each speaker, but eventually I decided to not vote in favor of this motion. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Greenan?
Thank you, Chair, through the chair. I just wanted to mention that it would work out to $55,625 in addition. That would be the addition to the reserves, would be $55,625 to bring it to a 4% requisition increase.
From what I've recently heard, I'm just wondering if there's an appetite to refer this information to be included in the 2027 budget planning. Giving it an opportunity to breathe, but having a place where everybody's sort of comfortable too.
If that is a desire, then we would consider a motion, a subsidiary motion to refer it to the 2027 budget planning. However, if that's not a desire, then we could just call the question on the motion on the table.
So see if that's a desire first.
I'll move that.
Comment moves that. Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second it.
Just a question of clarification. Is your intention, this motion here was related to this budget cycle, and so referring it to next year is about the increases in general and wanting to have healthy reserves? It's the topic as opposed to like this year's financial plan. I'm assuming your intention.
Yeah, because this motion is specific to the 2026 regional and common requisition allocation. So I don't think it would actually be in order to send it to next year's budget cycle, because we can't change 2026's budget cycle after today. Well, unless we have another meeting, but I don't think we're going to do that. So I think it's actually out of order, Chair.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, I agree that it's out of order.
Yes, I agree.
Ever ruling on that?
Yeah,
So now the motion's not on the table.
okay. So we'll call it the original, the question. So that the Regional Hospital District 2026 to 2030 financial plan bylaw be amended to change requisition regional and requisition volume Schedule A to be increased to 40%. All in favor? Opposed? Motion.
Director McCormick, I think is.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Nay, I was opposed.
Item 2.
Item 2, that the board give third reading of the Regional Hospital District 2026-2030 financial plan bylaw number 135, 2026.
So moved.
By Director Isaacson. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. And then to number 3, that the board adopt the Regional Hospital District 2026-2030 financial plan bylaw number 135, 2026.
So moved.
Gisborne, Director Isaacson seconds. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried.
We have a budget.
No new business. Is there a question, the question period?
Galinsky from the Peak here, Chair. I don't have any questions. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Nobody else? Then we'll make a motion to move in camera.
I'll make the motion, but a question to the corporate officers: do we have to add in any additional clause in relation to the matter that was referred to in camera?
Excuse me.
So we would be adding labor relations and the receipt of legal advice.
Then I will move with the addition of labor relations, and I think the solicitor-client privilege is already on this one. So that's I think it's labor relations is maybe C. I can't.
Yes, but
Not good. Okay, I'll move it with the addition of labor relations.
Second by Director Isaacson. All in favor? Opposed? None. We're doing it camera.
Have to read it all out.
What's everyone doing it for?
we're gonna need a little bit of a.
Okay.
We'll need 5 minutes if
Sure.
you guys need 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Recording stopped.
Were you?
Of the live stream.
I was like, oh, yeah. It's not good. Just confused as usual.
Yeah, same.
I saw that you guys were in the
With the.
qathet Regional District boardroom Zoom waiting. Aware of that.
Recording in progress.
Regional Hospital District Board public session. And I have a couple items to rise and report. Number one, staff provide a report regarding the definition of nuisance, hazardous substance, and permitted use in relation to the lease agreement at 4910 Joyce Avenue. And the board is continuing to pursue gathering information and communicating community concerns with parties. The second rise and report is the qathet Regional Hospital District is going to reach out to the Ministry of Health and Infrastructure with the advocacy for long-term financial planning.
We're at 10.3.
10.3. Is there any further discussion on 10.3, Director Gisborne?
Yeah. I'm just gonna make sure I'm on the motion. This motion was that we refer it to the qathet Regional District Board, I think, is that correct? Yeah, the one thing I want to speak to is 3.7, which is something I spoke to in the public session before we went in camera, around the requirement the regional district officer must be in attendance at that specific place. Does it require an amendment to move that clause be further investigated by referring that to staff?
Thank you. So currently on the table is that we're referring this to and recommending that it be provided first through adoption. I think that with the addition of further investigation and information to be provided regarding that clause.
Okay. I think that's a motion I gotta move, right? Investigate that clause further. Okay, I'll make that motion. Right, yes, it's an amendment.
Director Lennox seconds. Questions?
Yeah, just so the public is aware, I brought up some questions at the public session before I went in camera. I still have some questions. We also heard some stuff in camera, and I think referring this clause to our staff to get some more clarity will be beneficial to the board and the staff and everyone involved. So I hope everyone supports this amendment to the main motion, and then main motion.
Any other discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Is there any opposed? Seeing none? Now on the main motion.
Any further discussion?
Further discussion? Main motion? Outstanding. All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none? Carried. That the Regional Hospital Board refer and recommend the notice of motion policy to the qathet Regional District Board for adoption. Seriously, Dr. Isaacson, any discussion, questions? You guys more?
Yeah, our procedure bylaw outlines, how folks do notices of motion. I don't actually believe that we need a notice of motion policy. I can see how it could be beneficial to some, but to kind of echo, I think, what Director Lennox said previously, that it kind of just creates additional regulation for ourselves. I've looked around, I've seen some notice of motion policies in some local governments. They're not really widespread. And I think that the best way to handle notice of motions is through individual constraint around the table. And yeah, I don't think we actually need a notice of motion policy. I believe it was requested by some members of our board. So thanks to our staff for getting it written up, but I don't see the need to adopt such a policy. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions or discussions? None. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
For the sake, we might want to ask if there's any additional questions
Sure.
from the public. We've already done that, but we had further business.
Is there any other additional questions from the public? Glinski still with us?
Hearing none. Okay.
Hearing none. Aaron.
We'll need about 5 minutes. Take a 5-minute break, everyone.
Edgar Bush.
Recording in progress.
All right, that's the sound we're looking for. We will call this qathet Regional District Planning Committee to order here. Tuesday, March 24th already. I can't believe it. Time is just flying on by. Our first order of business is approval of the agenda. We have one in front of us. Can I have a mover? Thank you, Director McCormick and Director Brander. Any discussion on the proposed agenda? Seeing no hands, all those in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. That's carried. We're on to adoption of the minutes. Any errors or omissions from February 24th? Seeing no hands, can I have a mover? Thank you, Director Brander and Director Gisborne. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Do we have a delegation at all there? Corporate officer, any delegations? Nope. Thank you. No unfinished business, no correspondence, unusual, and no business arriving, some such. We're on to 8.1. So we have a housing capacity analysis final report. Do we have staff any presentation? I see we do have a presentation. Is that just from staff, corporate officer, or is that?
Oh, thank you. Yes, so Laura Rodden and Julia Dijkstra are here, as well as the consultant to provide the presentation.
Great. Well, I will let them do so.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to make a short introduction and set the context for this study. So between October 2025 and March 2026, qathet Regional District staff have been working with Liquor Geospatial Consulting to complete a housing capacity analysis. And staff involved have included planning staff as well as GIS staff and asset management and emergency services. So we had a holistic view of the data from the regional district's perspective. And the purpose of the project has been to improve our understanding of the region's capacity for residential growth under the existing official community plans and zoning bylaws. And funding for the project was covered through the BC Housing Capacity Initiative grant in its entirety. And this grant funding was provided by the province to support local governments and their compliance with requirements established under the Local Government Act to adopt a proactive and long-term approach to planning and for local governments to identify 5-year and 20-year housing needs and ensure that their land use bylaws support housing growth to meet those needs. And so to meet these requirements, the regional district has completed 2 studies over the last 2 years. So the housing needs report was completed at the end of 2024, and it identifies projected 5-year and 20-year housing needs for each of the electoral areas. And now this qathet Regional District Housing Capacity Analysis forecasts the capacity for future housing growth for each of the electoral areas. And so today we have Renee Pruill from Liquor Geospatial Consulting, and she's with us to present the report and its findings and to respond to any questions the directors have about the study and the findings.
Great. Well, I guess we'll welcome Renee, and I can't see anybody there, so I'll assume we're going to share the presentation.
Hi there.
Hi.
Thank you for that introduction, Laura. My name is Renee, and I'm a senior project manager at Liquor Geospatial, and I was one of the project manager and the analyst on the housing capacity analysis that we recently completed. And I'm really excited to show you all what we learned. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Unfortunately, you all kind of disappear. So if anyone has any questions,
I completely understand. It's the same for me.
yeah, thank you. Okay, so a little bit about LGO. We are a 16-person data-oriented consultancy, and we're located in Vancouver, BC. We provide analysis and decision support for 50 plus local governments in BC, and we've done a lot of these housing capacity projects. We've just completed it in your district, and now we have also worked with, for example, the Capital Regional District, the Cowichan Valley, several projects on the island, Vancouver, etc. So many housing capacity projects across BC. Our entire company's primary mission is to leverage spatial data to improve quality of life in our communities. The housing capacity analysis process can be kind of broken down into 4 main chunks. So the first part of the process is to analyze current state. So what is the existing stock? So we take a look at building information reports and parcel information, and we analyze what kind of units are available, how many, where are they located, parcel size, UPH, all that fun stuff. Then our next step is to contextualize the parcels. So what other information is available to describe the housing that currently exists? That includes things like land use from the OCP, what kind of constraints would be applied to that parcel, things like steep slopes or riparian areas, and then servicing. Are these lots serviced by water, sewer, both? All of that information was kind of consolidated into one data set, which is the parcel data set. Then next, we take all that information and we analyze redevelopment potential. So how desirable is a parcel, or how likely is it to redevelop? So we look at, again, more kind of criteria like servicing, its size, and potential subdividability, and then a couple other factors that go in to analyzing redevelopment potential. Then we do capacity analysis. So we have 3 different scenarios: absolute, relative, and realizable. And we analyze what kind of housing capacity could exist under those 3 scenarios, which I will explain in a minute. Something that I do want to say is that QRD staff's input and knowledge was so critical to the process, and we were consulting with staff at every single step. So we took the current state and we said, does this make sense? And then when we were contextualizing the parcels, we wanted to know what constraints are most applicable in your region, and redevelopment potential. We couldn't do that without understanding what staff's view and knowledge of what is redeveloping in the area. We couldn't have done it without that input. So thank you for everyone's time. So as mentioned, we have 3 different capacity analyses, and I'm just going to run through what those 3, what they kind of represent. So absolute capacity is kind of what the name implies, the theoretical maximum. So we're saying under current land use policy, what is the maximum that could be built on each parcel? So when we're looking at subdivisions, we'll use the minimum parcel size, and then we consider complete and partial development constraints. So there are kind of some limitations on development, but otherwise we are building to the theoretical maximums. That leads us to about 10,400 units for the entire region. Then we look at relative capacity. So this is still considering all unconstrained land for development, but it adds a little bit more conservatism by applying average parcel size to the subdivision. So that outcome is about 8,750 units. Then we look at realizable capacity, and realizable capacity, it takes a bit more of that kind of consideration of what is more likely to happen. It uses that redevelopment potential. So this only assumes that lots with high redevelopment potential will see new capacity in the near future. So that brings us to about 1,575 units. So the current state is that there are currently 4,425 dwelling units in the QRD under 19 different residential land use types. So you can see here the current housing and then how that is split up via different areas. So we see Area C and Savory Island have presently the most housing units. Okay, and then this graph is showing us the 3 different capacity analyses. So I kind of mentioned that absolute capacity is kind of the theoretical maximum, and then we apply some filters to kind of replicate realism, and that gets us down to realizable capacity. So regionally, absolute capacity is reduced by 16% when compared to relative capacity as a result of the more conservative subdivision. And then realizable capacity is further reduced by 82% when only land that's likely to develop is considered. So we can see once under the realizable scenario that the highest kind of capacity growth is expected in area A, followed by area D. If we all add this all together, regionally, the capacity for new units is 36% greater than the current number of units. And our current total, as I mentioned, around 4,000, the total realizable 1,576, and then all in all, that becomes about 6,000 units. So in this graph, you can see the darker color is the current housing units, and then the lighter color on top would be what would be added under the realizable capacity scenario. So some assumptions and limitations. Obviously, this is for starters based on BC assessment data. So we are relying on BC assessment to tell us what units are presently there. Sometimes this information isn't 100% reflective of what is going on the ground, but it is, you know, the best data available for what kind of housing is available. And then also the future assumptions are dependent on market conditions. What we're saying makes for a desirable makes for a desirable kind of development or a high redevelopment score is dependent on market conditions. So this is predicted, not necessarily guaranteed growth, and would be subject, if things change, to potentially adapting how redevelopment is assessed. But the key takeaways are that statutory land use entitlements, so the current OCP, allows for significant capacity, though much of that is undevelopable. And the realizable capacity, when we add kind of that realism element, does meet current targets for projected 20-year need. Much of that capacity is coming from secondary units. So we do see about 338 units coming from subdivisions on currently vacant properties, but the vast majority of growth is coming from secondary suites. Furthermore, growth is clustered in existing serviced areas and in large vacant lots near Highway 101. Okay, so then the exciting part would be potential next steps. Laura did mention, you know, how this fits into all of the housing related planning currently underway, but this is a really great inventory of what housing is available and what could potentially be changing in the region. So this data can be used to guide future planning decisions. So detailed infrastructure planning work can definitely lean on this research. Exploring land use policy updates to guide or induce mindful growth based on, you know, what the data is showing us for growth hotspots, and scenario type planning for high potential areas. So looking at where redevelopment scores are higher and understanding what kind of planning would be most mindful in that area. The data can also be used for other value-added purposes like emergency planning, kind of predicting where there will be further demand for emergency services, climate adaptation, and then just other forms of growth and change analysis. Really, there are a lot of opportunities here. And so I just want to say thank you. We're going to be updating this map soon, where we can kind of add this project on top of the existing work we've done in the region. And I really appreciate your time. I'd love to answer your questions. Okay, so my email is renee@lgo.co, but you can also email Aaron. The principal of the firm, unfortunately, was affected by that big windstorm that's currently happening and lost power. So he was meant to be giving this presentation. So I apologize for that not being updated, but feel free to reach out to either Aaron or I in the future, but I'm also here to answer questions right now. So thank you.
Great. Well, Thank you, Renee, and I'm lucky to have kept power. It's starting to mellow out now here in Lund, but I appreciate your presentation. And I didn't say sorry for the delay. We had a couple of meetings go late, so really thank you for sticking around with us to do the presentation. I'm going to open it up to directors for questions, although it's hard for me to see. So directors, put your hand up if you have questions, please. I'm going to be looking for you here. I see Director Gisborne. We'll start with you.
Sure, I'll bite. So my first question is, and thanks for the presentation. I love details. I love data. And of course, one of the things that pops up is, you can really only analyze the data that you have. And of course, up here, we don't have like building permits and a lot of regulations. So quite often it's like, what's going on? Not really sure. My first question is, I took a look back at the 2024 housing needs assessment, and it showed Area B as having 908 dwelling units, but on the presentation, it shows Area B as only having 700 units. And I'm just wondering, is that discrepancy, with BC assessment, or maybe they're like RVs, which might show up as being a dwelling unit, but wouldn't show up on the assessment? And I'm just wondering, it's 200 units is kind of a big difference.
Yeah, that is pretty impactful. To my understanding, RVs and kind of mobile homes are included in the BIR, which is the source for this information. But obviously not all would be included, right? Like it depends on kind of the property. Usually those are kind of residential mobile home parks that get included. That could be a source of the difference. Be happy to look into that. But this is correct based on the building information reports.
Oh, okay. And I think I saw our manager of planning services raise her hand and maybe.
Oh, thank you. Ms. Rodden, do you have a comment?
The chair, yeah, I'd just like to add on to what Renee said in that, the housing needs assessment used census data, and the census doesn't count like RVs as dwelling units. So that could be one of the things contributing to the difference, but I can also look into it on my end and provide some follow-up information.
Great.
Does, yeah.
Yeah, because it's, Area B is well, I'm sure it's similar to a lot of other areas, but in the housing needs assessment from 2024, it showed that Area B had, I think, over 300 non-conventional housing types, which was like the lion's share of non-conventional housing types. And, they don't necessarily show up everywhere, but if you drive around, you'll find them. So it's how how does the data come together is curious. So no, thanks for manager of planning services to find out more.
I'll add definitely something to further investigate, that the census focuses on people from a household perspective, whereas this assessment focuses more on the structure. So there can be discrepancies if there are multiple units in a household that aren't necessarily known to BC assessment. But
thank you. Okay, I think even though Director McCormick is clapping, I think she did enjoy your presentation. I think it's her hand. She's trying to ask a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, it might be better if you got rid of the presentation, then we could see each other. I really found the housing capacity analysis really interesting. I'm sorry, I'm croaking like a Kermit the Frog. But especially Area D, where you recommend that there's a lot of capacity for growth. Interestingly, when we've just been through our budget process, Area D is the one area that went down in assessed value, property value, throughout the region. And I'm just wondering how big an influence are economic factors and other things that would influence the capacity for growth, but decrease the perhaps likelihood of that. So my question is, do you consider other things like economics and other influences on population growth?
Thank you, Renee. Does marketplace and listing price come into it? I think I saw some information on your slide.
So listing prices do not come into it per se, but we do look at essentially the gap between like if there is a higher value land versus lower value structure, and it's in a well-placed area, that would potentially make it more desirable to redevelopment, right? That would make someone more incentivized to purchase and maybe build a new structure on that. So that is a way in which we analyze economics, but in the process of how many units will develop, no. What we do is we consider the top 20% of desirable, redevelopable, or developable land. So yes, in an economic downturn, likely less buildings perhaps would be developed in the sense of we'd get large subdivisions. However, I do think that in times of, economic downturn, some things like developing a secondary suite or an accessory dwelling become more desirable. So I do think it's really hard to kind of analyze the specifics, but I will note that much of this growth is more in the accessory dwelling, which I think is a bit more resilient to economic change. Yes, but to answer your question, unfortunately, no, we are not kind of forecasting an economic model for how redevelopment may occur, but we are considering the likelihood.
Okay. Director McCormick, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, follow-up. Yeah. Thank you. People are using RVs. I'm sorry. People are using RVs as secondary suites, buying RVs, parking them, and then renting them. Are you counting RVs, or do you not count any RVs anywhere?
If the RV is registered as like a legal suite, then it would be counted.
It's text data, not likely.
So, I guess, how would I put this? For the future growth, it's necessarily saying what it will be, but it would have to be kind of a registered unit. But that is an interesting factor, is if a lot of people are adding capacity on their own lots by purchasing an RV, that is kind of a form of the growth that we're talking about, is that the majority of what we'll be likely seeing is concentrated in serviced areas, or alternatively in large lots that are along the highway.
Thank you.
All right, looking for any other hands. Director Brander, any, I don't see your hand. You're pretty small, but I don't see. Okay. I'm going to actually step in. Thank you again for your presentation. A few thoughts and a couple of questions. You answered, Ms. Rodden answered about the cost and that we got a grant. So that was good. And that it is about compliance. We're required to do some of this work. Obviously, Lund stands out. That's where I'm sitting right here on I guess, a technically realizable property, but it does make us, it's a good thing to consider. What does it take to actually get that work done? Water, sewer, room to expand these systems that we have. I'm not, I think it's really, we have some limitations, even though those heat maps show Lund Central here is pretty high. I actually appreciate the difference in what is realizable, because one of my islands up in Desolation Sound is heat mapped as a high potential for subdivision.
Talking about Mink Island.
Yes, thank you. I wasn't going to single the Mink Islanders out because they'll get worried, but I know there's potential, but I mean the reality. So I appreciate your explanation on that. I actually hadn't thought that secondary suites probably were part of what that capacity is, and I've built myself one as well, but I'm just going to let my family live here. But I think that's important for us to consider. It's not just subdividing; it's using those other means on our properties, and really incentives to actually densify, and what those are. If there are any incentives in this day and age. So I'm not so sure there's a high likelihood of redevelopment in a lot of these places, but they are desirable. So I was looking at some of the comments versus desirability versus likelihood. And the cost of living and affordability is becoming an issue out here. And so that, again, we thinking about what kind of communities we're creating. You identified next steps on page 4 of 87 there in my numbers. So I appreciate that. I don't have it in front of me again, but actually I'll just pop it up for myself. Sorry, folks, I just wanted to take 2 seconds here. There it is. And just look at what those next steps could be. Maybe you could comment on those while I'm looking.
Sorry, is the question to comment on the next steps?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah, so you were kind of discussing capacity, right? Like Lund specifically desirable from a redevelopment standpoint because there is that connection to servicing and is well located. So something that might be like a good use of this information is to kind of explore land use policy updates or infrastructure planning for that area, to be able to kind of consider, is this a good spot to be putting future capacity, and whether or not the infrastructure, needs to be invested in, or if there needs to be any expansions to accommodate that. So detailed infrastructure planning work would probably be very relevant. Yeah, I think that this information is a really good baseline for understanding what housing is available and where the areas that we're seeing growth and how we're seeing growth happen. And then to reassess year over year, right? Like this is awesome. It's an awesome kind of current state and future state to come back to in 5 years, in 10 years, see what's happened, what's changed, and do that kind of planning to understand future growth. It's always good to kind of have this data and information to look back on. So I view this as a good kind of stepping stone for updating growth and change analysis year over year. And then, like you mentioned, Lund infrastructure, that's super important.
Yeah, and maybe you've just, thank you, Renee. You've reminded me that, and for the other directors, this actually supports our work, with Lund Water and trying to, get to the point where that's a sustainable long-term system for increased users. And actually, I appreciated your points on Savory. There is no more room for density on Savory with our 50-foot lots, and I'm glad you didn't include the bottle shape to should be actually dead-ended for Savory. So appreciate your presentation. Any other questions? I don't want to look and see here. Director Gisborne.
Yeah, I'll take a second kick at the can. One of the questions that comes up in my mind when I first read this is there's a lot of reference to like number of parcels, subdivisions, and so just to clarify, I live on ALR, and I've always been kind of confused as to why why when you create more parcels you somehow get more housing. And I'm wondering, like, is that like when it comes down to like say official community plans or zoning bylaws where it's like like one dwelling per parcel and then one ADU, is that kind of where that if you get more parcels you can get more dwellings because the zoning bylaw kind of restricts you on how many you can do? Like, is that where I'm kind of reading that from?
Yes. So this doesn't also, Laura, if you'd prefer to answer this, please cut me off. But essentially, well, ALR, this would not apply because ALR has very different regulations. But in a large parcel that is zoned for rural residential, there is both a minimum and average parcel size. And so there can be an application made to subdivide so that you can put one or, well, it's two, typically one unit or one dwelling, but then it would have an accessory dwelling or secondary suite. So 2 units per parcel. That is generally the land use policy that's laid out. So that is why you would see subdivision of a large vacant parcel. But those have application processes, but they are the size of the final subdivision would be regulated by the land use policy.
Okay, and I see our planner has a hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll just add to that, one of the constraints to redevelopment is the lack of water and sewer servicing in the electoral areas. So the heat maps show that there's more capacity in Lund because there's water and sewer, and the provincial regulations and policies are that a 1 hectare minimum parcel size unless you have water and sewer servicing, right? So it's all tied to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I got a follow-up. So at this table, we passed a motion around ALR that's going to ABICC about, the total cumulative floor area for ALR. And I know this assessment doesn't cover that. But I noticed some local governments are like redefining density from like the number of dwelling units per hectare or per acre to kind of like a floor area model. Do you find like what kind of impact does that have on the assessments when it's kind of like you can have as many dwellings as you want, but you can only go so large in terms of lot coverage? Does that like how does that change your analysis? And do you have any examples of some communities where that's kind of shown up?
Ms. Brule, any comments?
I haven't personally done any analysis where we don't operate off of number of units, but we're rather operating off of like a total floor area to a maximum number of units. That would be quite challenging to model because I wonder what the balance between maximizing size, like what is the minimum size that someone would desire to build in that context. But in theory, that is something that we could apply with the data that we have assembled, right? Because we generally do have that information for structures, and we could be modeling or even testing a similar policy on ALR. But I generally do think that in the area, the desirability of many tiny homes, for example, on a large lot, I don't see that being necessarily the most desirable from like a financial or like a resident perspective. So yeah, I'd have to think about that a little bit more. I guess my answer is no, I have not personally done that, but it is possible from the standpoint of the data that we've assembled to model such a policy and see how that would impact growth.
Thank you very much. Sorry for like such an outlandish question. It's one that's been like kind of burning in the back of my mind, and it was just thank you very much for that answer. I know it's a weird question. Thank you.
All good. Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate your acknowledgement of our staff as well, because obviously they do a lot of work to fill in the blanks in a very unregulated area. So. Seeing no other hands or questions, thank you for your presentation, and we're going to let you go and take care of business.
Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you. So, directors, really, we just have a motion to accept this report. So, can I have a mover to do so? Director Gisborne, I see your hand. Director Brander, seconded. Any other discussion? I think we've had a good. Okay, Director Gisborne.
Yeah, just one question. I guess it's mainly for our staff. And I heard this was covered by a grant here. It's provincially required. And I'm just wondering, like, how frequently are we going to have to update these? Like, of course, how the province, they give you a grant first and then they want you to update it and they don't get any money the second time.
How long can we delay, Ms. Rodden?
Through the chair, there's no requirement to update the report. This is for our own purposes, and actually with the detailed methodology in the study, it will be possible for our GIS staff here at the regional district to track and monitor change over time.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Well, I think we'll put it to the vote. All those in favor of accepting the report? That's unanimous. That's carried. Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. Sorry, folks. Let me just go back to my agenda here. Okay, we're going to move on to 8.2. We do have a subdivision application before us. So this is in Area C, Highway 101. We have some the recommendations to support this with several of our usual conditions. So can I have a mover? Director Brander, seconded. Director Gisborne, discussion. All right, not seeing any hands. I had a good look at it. And again, these are our normal provisions and 2 big lots being subdivided. So into 2 big lots. So and seeing no other questions, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favor? That's unanimous. It's carried. Thank you. No new business. Question period. Mr.
Uh,
Galinsky.
Yes, Mr. Galinsky is here, Chair. Thank you very much. Everything seems pretty straightforward. Thanks for the opportunity to pose a question.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions, gallery or online? Seeing none, we do have a proposed closed session. Can I have a mover? Director Gisborne. I need a secondary, Director Brander. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried unanimously. We are going in camera.
Recording in progress.
All right, we are back from our in-camera session. We have no rise and report. This meeting is adjourned. Good day, everybody.
Everyone.